everyone, welcome back to the Chinese Medicine Podcast. It's Marie Hopkinson here. I said this year I was going to make 20 videos about my journey in Chinese medicine, celebrating 20 years in practice. Now, surprise, surprise, I haven't done that. I often have these ideas and these things that I'm going to do, and look, I've done what I've done. I think I've done 3 or 4 of them, but I thought I'll make this one now to kind of give you a bit of a summary of my study in Chinese medicine, why you might want to learn Chinese medicine with me, because out of this year, I think it was even out of doing this series, I was starting to think about how passionate I was about studying it and how I've done it and what my journey's been like. I've decided to run a course for people next year, which is open to people of all kind of aspects of their learning abilities. So it's not a formal course, it's an informal course. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this video, and I want to give you an apology if you were watching the series and thinking, Marie hasn't put any more videos in this series. It's a little bit more personal than what I would normally do, right? It's not about Chinese medicine, it's more about me and just my learning experiences and my things that I've learned along the way. So I hope you enjoy this video. I love Chinese medicine, and I have learned it from a young age, let's say, when I was a teenager. Now, prior to that, I had no understanding of it. It wasn't like my parents brought me up understanding Chinese medicine, anything like that. I came home from my first couple of years of Chinese medicine school every day to my mum thinking, will this person ever get a job? She even asked my teacher when I graduated, do you think that Marie will ever get a job? Because she didn't think that there was an income in it, let alone a thriving business in it, because it was so foreign to our family. And that was the point where I came from. It was a foreign thing. It wasn't a common thing for me to go and do it. It was really bizarre. And I honestly, to this day, I still don't know how I came about actually doing it. It was very strange. I just sort of wanted to do it from, I don't know where that idea came from. But it was meant to be because I love it. And I remember from the very first day of learning it, I thought this system or this understanding, this new thing, just makes sense to me. It made sense to me in a weird way. A lot of the stuff I remember thinking, these are like old wives' tales. People used to say, don't go out in the wind or you might, your face might go crazy, or something like that. But there was this in-depth understanding within Chinese medicine over the years of me learning it that made me realize, hey, that's actually, there's a truth in that. And how did they get to that truth? And every single time I would learn a deeper layer of understanding, it just made sense. And it was only through teachers that were good at explaining things that it started to make sense to me. And there were some parts of the journey along the way where it didn't make sense to me, and I had to seek that out and sit there for ages, hours and hours, just kind of thinking about these topics and thinking about this, mulling this over. And also through teaching Chinese medicine myself, it made me into a good teacher, because it made me think, well, how am I going to explain this thing? Firstly to myself, and then how am I going to explain this concept to students in a way that, could make sense? So I'm good at that, and I know that I'm good at that, and I want to help you with that skill to be able to understand the beauty of it, because it's so great. Now, I'm not here to bang on about how great Chinese medicine is. I'm meant to be telling you about me. So what did I do? When I was 17, I went straight from high school and I went and studied Chinese medicine. I got my first degree in it, and I did an advanced diploma at a very small school that's kind of not around anymore. But at the time it was a very popular school, and it was the first time Chinese medicine was offered at that school. And I remember being really excited about it, and I started out just being an acupuncture student, and the course developed into a herbal medicine course within the first year of me doing it. So I was very fortunate to be able to learn Chinese herbs and acupuncture at the same time. And then when I graduated, I honestly didn't want to run my own business. I just thought I'd love to just work at someone else's clinic. But there just wasn't the opportunity to do that. My teacher created an opportunity for me to come and work at his clinic, and I was one of the first people that had ever worked for him. All this time he'd been able to just run his business with just him being the main practitioner. And that was the case for all the practitioners that I knew. There just weren't jobs in it. And he lived quite far from me, and I had to travel an hour to kind of get there. So I did that once a week, and I did that once a week for 9 years because I loved it so much. And it was really hard to leave that, that opportunity. But my own business had kind of grown, obviously, quite a lot by then, and I, couldn't sort of even afford that extra 2 hours a week just in travel time. I was like, I really needed to focus on my own business by then. So I started my own clinic, and I learned how to run a business by running a business. And I never wanted to run a business. My parents had a business, and honestly didn't want to, I didn't want to borrow for running a business because I just thought this is going to be arduous and difficult, and it was. But it succeeded in helping me find a large amount of people that were interested in what I was doing, and enabled me to practice my passion. So that was the only reason I was interested in business. And I was doing that for about 12 years. And over the years of doing it, I had to move premises because I was growing and I was expanding. One of the places I moved into had a retail shop attached to it. At the time, there wasn't much retail going on in that area, so I just was using that as a giant waiting room. But then after a while, that area started to expand and grow bigger. And so I ended up starting up a retail shop as well. Now, over that time, I'd been practicing Chinese medicine and teaching Chinese medicine. Maybe from the first couple of years of practicing, I was asked to come and teach Chinese massage. I think I'd only been graduated like a year since I'd been to China, but I was very passionate about Chinese massage at that point, Twainer. So I used to go to this shiatsu school and again, travel an hour to go and teach these students Chinese diet therapy and different aspects of Twainer and point location, like that's helping to find the point. So I've had a long time, actually. I've been teaching Chinese medicine almost for as long as I've been practicing it. So probably, honestly, about 18 years, but not at that same academic level. So then I started teaching at an undergraduate academic level of a bachelor degree level, around 2007 or something like that. And so I've been teaching Chinese medicine a long time, and I've taught almost every class that the school that I teach at now. I've taught almost every class that they have. I have another degree in international health. So after about 5 years of practicing, or maybe 3 years of practicing Chinese medicine, I started to think I really wanted to do teaching, and I thought if I don't get a degree higher than the degree I have, I won't be able to teach in the long term, because I could kind of see that coming into the industry. At the time, there was no requirement, but they were kind of trying to bring that into the industry. So I went and found a university that would take me onto a program, one that I would just be able to get a master's degree in, and secondly, something I was remotely interested in, and I was looking for something to have a connection to Chinese medicine. Now, at that point, there weren't any master's degrees in Chinese medicine. There are now, but there weren't in Australia then. So I did a degree called a Masters of International Health, and what that course was about was looking at, it's like a public health degree, but for an international context. So a lot of people do that course because they either wanted to work for the WHO, they wanted to work for the UN, they wanted to do research for a non-government organisation, an NGO, like World Vision or one of these international aid organisations or something like that. They want to do research or development for those companies or not-for-profit organisations, that kind of thing. Or they just wanted a research degree. That's kind of what I wanted. But also that course had a focus on countries which were considered developing countries. And at that time, China was considered, in rural China, areas were considered a developing country by the WHO. I don't know if that's actually changed now, I know their rural areas have those same challenges, but I don't think the WHO considers them a developing nation now. Anyway, so the word developing nation is what they used to call a third world country, right? They don't use that terminology anymore in the industry. So these poorer nations, or nations which have challenges of sanitation and hygiene and access to healthcare and access to healthcare workers, resources, this kind of stuff. And then you also have look at the challenges of maternal and child healthcare. Looking at the issues with cultural things. So, some countries are doing certain cultural practices and it's very unhealthy, but they think that that's good for another reason, right? So there's countries like, for instance, in Myanmar, there's a kind of a cultural understanding that if I slept with a virgin, I could cure myself of HIV. Well, you can understand how that's going to play out in the long term, right? So it's a very interesting degree. You're kind of looking at these issues, do a lot of assignments. And what I was mostly happy about was that I got to go back to China for a second time and do some more research in Chinese medicine. And so that's what I was doing around, I think I graduated that course about 2006. So And then I was doing more teaching, and I was also running my business. And then I started running this retail shop, and I was getting really involved in the retail side of things. And I was going to China back and forward quite a lot. My neighbours who had a shop, that's how I kind of got involved in that. They used to do that. And that gave me a whole bunch of experience in business, commerce, like dealing with factories, like merchandising in a retail shop. Now that's got nothing to do with you learning this course, but just being transparent and letting you know what's happened. Because what had happened to me as well is I'd lost the passion for Chinese medicine because this other passion had kind of taken over. And so I remember being in my store one day thinking, wow, this business stuff is really, I could just run several businesses. I was thinking of maybe even, turning my retail shop into a franchise or something like that. And I, want to grow that business. And all of these things take up your time and take up your focus. And I was really good at Chinese medicine and I was good at teaching, but I wasn't invested in I've got to further study Chinese medicine. I've got to get even better at it. I just used to be good at treating the kinds of patients I was treating. Oops. I was good at treating the kinds of patients that were coming in the door and they were getting good results, but I wasn't treating very difficult cases. I wasn't challenging myself to learn the depths of Chinese medicine, right? And I wasn't interested in that really, to be honest, and I didn't have an outlet to do that if I wanted to. I didn't have something that had ignited my passion and my desire. There's no course that had caught my eye, let's just say that. So from around 2012 to 2015 or so, I was in this zone of I was loving Chinese medicine, I was loving doing my teaching. I took a little break from teaching because my business was getting so busy, right? So I think I had about 2 or 3 years where I didn't teach at a college, but then I went back to it because I just missed it. I love it. And I think I'd started the Chinese medicine podcast around that time as well, around 2012. YouTube was becoming more accessible and easier to use, and the video uploads were quicker and, that kind of stuff. So I started doing my little YouTube channel and really I only started doing that to just educate my own patients. And I thought, well, there's all these things I want to tell them. I'll put it in a video and I'll send it to them in a video and I'll send them the link to the video. And that was really what I was doing. I wasn't wanting to become a YouTuber. I wasn't wanting to run a podcast or anything like that at that time. And I had just simply called the channel my own name, right? I didn't even call it anything to do with Chinese medicine. And so all this stuff was kind of going on. And I was getting very busy in my business with the retail stuff, going back and forth from China. So in that period of time, well, the first time I went to China was 2001. Then the next time was 2004 or 5 when I went. 2005 when I went for my master's degree research, and then I went again in I think it was 2009, just after the Beijing Olympics. And then the next season I'd gone to China many times, so in total I've gone 11 times, right? And 1 year I'd gone twice, and I was going to the Canton Fair, I was going to lots of factories and things like that, and I was loving it. I wanted to live in China. I just loved it so much, and I still love it, but I haven't been able to go, obviously, because they've closed their doors to people. And as of we in Australia, the doors of travel are not yet open at the time of making this video. So anyway, that was all going on, and then one day my old teacher, the teacher I was working for back in when I first graduated, he said to me, I've studied this new course and, they're going to open up they're going to run again. So it was like a 3-year program, and he'd done it, a few years ago. And he said, the teacher from the US is going to come back and do it again. And when he does, you've got to sign up. It's the best thing ever and all this kind of stuff. And that's the classical Chinese medicine course that I now have known, grown to love. And it basically reignited my passion. So I started doing that in 2016. And I travelled to Sydney, I paid the money, and I was like, yeah, I could almost take it or leave it, but I was just doing it because my teacher said, you should do it. And he was so passionate about it, and I thought, yep, And I remember going to that seminar thinking, here we go, here's another course. Because when you do Chinese medicine or any medicine in Australia and you're registered, you have to do a certain amount of hours of continuous education. So you just look for courses and seminars to attend to kind of get the points, fulfill your requirements. So I was kind of going to it almost thinking, I wasn't thinking it was going to be life changing or anything. And I had an A4 book, right, notebook, and I remember going there and I started writing it. I've been to hundreds of seminars in my life, like a lot. Like I'm a seminar person, but not so much in Chinese medicine. I go to a lot of self-help and, these kinds of things, Tony Robbins and all this sort of stuff. And I remember sitting there and I was like, wow, like the first 2 hours of the seminar, I hadn't even checked my phone. I hadn't even checked my emails. And because I was just busy writing. And by the first day and a half, I had to go and buy another notebook. I was there for a 4-day thing. And I was thinking, this is just filled up. What I thought I would fill up in a weekend, what I'd prepared for a weekend for 4 days, had been used up in a day and a half. So that's how passionate I was. And I was super excited about it. I remember thinking, this is exactly what Chinese medicine, what I thought it was when I was first studying it. Like, this is it. So that reignited my passion, not just for Chinese medicine, but for herbs, right? So, I got stuck into doing raw herbs and bulk herbs a little bit more than I was before. And I just got more passionate about herbs and probably a little less passionate about acupuncture, let's say, just if I had to. Still like acupuncture, but I really just have focused on herbs. And the course I did focuses on pulse diagnosis for Chinese herbs. So that's what's happened to me in my life about Chinese medicine, my Chinese medicine life, my Chinese medicine journey. So this year, 2021, marks 20 years of practicing Chinese medicine. So I graduated in the year 2000 and I then went to China, and at the end of that little bit of China, so I took 6 months, I wasn't really practicing. In the year 2001, I took 6 months to kind of get money, saved up the money, did a little job, and then I went to China, and when I came back I started my practice. So technically I've been practicing for 20 years now, and I've loved every minute of it. I've loved every minute of the journey, and I wanted to make a video series this year of 20 videos to celebrate 20 years in Chinese medicine in 2021, but it just didn't happen. Other things have taken over the time. And so I thought I'd make this little video as a little synopsis of all of that. So people who were following that journey were like, the highlights. So I still might continue that series maybe next year. Just the highlights and the ups and downs and the things that have happened to me. But I did make a video of my journey of going to China. I've done a couple of those, and I went through this book that I made. So if you really want to know a bit more about me as a person, that's what this series is kind of about. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you again on another video soon.